At the core of the material universe, there is a specific spatial frame, non-material structure, the Ezoosmic grid. Any resident of the three-dimensional world would perceive this energy structure as a very flattened object, in appearance similar to a flat brick, with a psi height of 1/72nd of the size of its base. In other words, the Ezoosmic grid has a flat geometry. The ability of the material universe to expand is limited by the size of the Ezoosmic grid. Within the Ezoosmic grid, there are 72 dimensions. For more information about 72 dimensions, please refer to the book ALLATRA. Everything that is called by modern science the material universe exists only within the first 6 dimensions, and the other 66, in essence, are controlling superstructures which restrain the material world within a certain constraining framework, 6 dimensions. According to the Asian knowledge, 66 dimensions, from the 7th through the 72nd inclusive, also belong to the material world, but they are not material in their essence. Outside the Ezoosmic grid, as it was stated in Asian sacred legends of various nations of the world, there is the spiritual world, a qualitatively different world which has nothing in common with the material world, its laws and problems. The Ezoosmic grid is stable and motionless. It consists of a certain number of identical Ezoosmic cells, having a shape of a cube in the three-dimensional space. Although for dimensions about the third one, the structure becomes more complex. Every Ezoosmic cell consists of, relatively speaking, 6 walls in the form of Ezoosmic membranes. Inside, in the center of the cube of every Ezoosmic cell, there is a stationary Po particle.
Today, you can find a lot of references to the Ezoosmic grid, which have been preserved from ancient times by different nations of the world, living on different continents. Today, there are many artifacts from different epochs, indicating that lattices, grids, rhombuses with a dot inside, circles, squares and spirals were widespread elements of design and ornamentation on ritual crockery, clothing, sacred objects, and in the decoration of sacred texts of different nations. And some of them even in the Paleolithic age. It is wrong to think that they denote sown field, because these signs appeared long before the origin of agriculture. Unfortunately, the closer we get to our times, the more we see the loss of the knowledge and misunderstanding of its essence, substitution of the sacred metaphorical meanings by earthly meaning.
It is known that in the past, people left the sacred knowledge important to the following generations. In certain places, as a rule, in rock carvings, including those in the form of certain signs. Cave signs and symbols found on different continents are rather identical because of some specific signs that points to the common source of that knowledge. For more information about this, please refer to the book ALLATRA.
Ancient Egyptians believed that a goddess called Nut was the mother of the stars, one who gives birth to gods. Her children were the stars over which she ruled. She was identified with cosmic space.
At first, she was depicted as the heavenly cow. Then, as a woman Nut, as an ocean, and even as a dome, roof, as the symbol of something hidden under the visible image, something incomprehensible to man. She fenced the invisible and incomprehensible part of the world from the visible, short time and temporal part, the eternal world, from the temporal and earthly world. Sometimes she was painted on the inside lid of sarcophagus, looking at the mummy.
Nude can be found in the drawings which were used to decorate the interior of pyramids or sacred texts. These were the images of a woman, the goddess of space, bent in the form of a square, rectangle or dome, stretching across the whole horizon. Her body or clothes, as a rule, had a grid ornament or a rhombus-like picture, sometimes with dots in every square. In ancient Egypt, grid plating and patterns were painted on burial sarcophaguses and statues, which demonstrated beliefs of ancient Egyptians about the invisible world and where a person disappeared to. It is interesting that almost all such grid covers for sarcophaguses were made in blue and green colors and decorated with turquoise beads. That has its meaning, indicating certain sacred knowledge. For more details, please refer to the book Allatra for the significance of blue and green colors in the mythology of peoples of the world. In Chinese philosophy, there is such an ancient concept as Yizhu, which means space and time and universe. And in modern world it is used in the meaning of cosmos. It is interesting that etymologically this word derives from the word denoting two perpendicular bars at the base of a roof. And as we have already said, the ancients conveyed the knowledge about the processes happening in the invisible world with help of associative examples.
In the Chinese philosophical Taoism text Zhuangzi 400 to 300 BC, the concepts Yui and Zhou were connected with the concept of Tao, which is one of the central concepts in Chinese philosophy. It is used in different philosophical schools and characterized as divine emptiness, all-encompassing unity of all, the first cause of origin, the source of everything and the principle of its existence. It is eternal and has no name. It is empty and inexhaustible. It gives birth to many things. It may be passed, but may not be taken. It may be perceived, but may not be seen. It has its root and ground in itself. It has no beginning and no ending.
In the treatise Huainanzi, there are these references to the Tao. Tao is connected with something that has no form. It runs as a source. It is in full swing. It stands between sky and earth and fills all the space. It strains 4 ropes. It has yin-yang in its mouth. An interesting expression, it has yin-yang in its mouth. For more details, refer to the book Allatra, the information about the intersection of the 72nd and the 1st dimensions.
From Tao Te Ching, well-known Chinese philosophical text of the 6th to 5th centuries BC, the great is in infinite movement. That what is in infinite movement reaches no limit. As it reaches no limit, it comes back to its origin. Thanks to it, everything is born and continues its growth. The Tao is hidden from us. The Tao gives birth to one. One gives birth to two. Two give birth to three. And three give birth to all creatures. All creatures have in them yin and yang. They are full of qi and are all in harmony. To follow the shine Tao, to perceive its deepest sense.
The sign yin-yang symbolizes the creative unity of the opposite forces in the universe. According to ancient Chinese views, yin means variability, and yang means inalterability, patiency, inviolability. It is explained in the Primordial Allatra Physics that variability is a characteristic of phantom particles, and patiency and inviolability of the real stationary particles. The symbols of weaving and spinning had sacred meaning for many nations. Much ancient knowledge has been preserved to the present day. For instance, there is an Arabic word nul, which means an ancient hand-knitting loom. A plain rectangular framework with two strained threads forming a lattice. What is the associative connection of this symbol with the ancients' cosmological conceptions?
Namely, a hand-knitting loom was used as an example to explain the tool of creating the universe, which was operated by the creative God who knitted threads, intertwined a pattern sign from them into the cloth of the world, thus determining the life and destiny of everything, including every man. And the spinning processes, the process of linear folding and spiral twisting of different fibers with the help of a spindle in order to create one solid yarn, were used to explain the process of creation of all the things and life in the universe. Spiral rotation of spindle symbolized the movement of the universe, a curtain through which the world is seen as an illusion.
The word spindle is related to the ancient Indian word vatanam, which means spinning, rolling, moving backwards and frontwards. The spinning was a characteristic of the Great Mother and moon goddesses. As a rule, their characteristic feature was the Allat sign, half moons with its horns up, as well as the weavers of fate in cosmic mythology of many nations of the world.
For example, in the East Slavic mythology, the patroness of the female principle, fate, fertility, water, spinning and weaving, also called the invisible great spinner of the world, was the goddess Mokosh, Mokosh. One of her attributes was a cornucopia, half moon, with its horns up. They knew about the creation of the world as a process similar to the process of creating a yarn or cloth. The world is spinned as a yarn, is wrapped as a warp yarn, and is weaved as a cloth. How this ancient knowledge was destroyed and the new worldview of priests was imposed and politicized, one can judge by the fact that almost all lectures against paganism in 12th to 14th centuries contained the name of ancient Mokosh.
Mokosh was an important goddess of the Proto-Slavic pantheon, who was among 7 main gods. The meaning of her name, Mokosh, more precisely Mokosh, is very interesting. The etymology of this word is said to be connected with the root which denotes spinning, yarn.
In Sanskrit, there is a word moksha, moksa, which means liberation, which is still used in Indian philosophy and religion as the concept of spiritual liberation. In the name Mokosh, taken into consideration Old Indo-European age of the word Ma, the first word means mother, the great mother who gave birth to the world, the goddess of fate. And the word kosh in Old Slavic language means braided basket, braided cart for sheaves, known from the times of the Neolithic 4000 to 3000 BC, a storage for grain.
In the mythology of nations of the world, grains represent an ancient symbol of birth, resurrection, and renewal of the world. And from the perspective of the spiritual development of man, the symbol of grain is the formation and establishment of spiritual life in a man, where the highest values are the achievement of non-material goods and spiritual maturation. That is why the initial image of the goddess, patroness of full baskets, as the mother of the true happiness, liberation, had completely different meaning, connected with non-material values of a man.
In many ancient cosmological myths of nations of the world, it is noted that it is goddesses who did weaving as an act of cosmic creation. Continuous process, where all coming events, threads, were interweaved in a constantly changing pattern on an unchanging warp. Moreover, warp, the lengthwise threads on a frame, was the symbol of the permanent and constant, which links all the levels of the universe, and weft, the transverse threads, placed perpendicular to the warp threads and interweaved with them, symbolized the inconstant and changeable, quantitative, the nature itself in time and space. The warp and the weft make up a cross.
Almost all the goddesses of fate and time in mythology of nations of the world are spinners and weavers. Even nowadays, one can find various mentions, rituals, traditions and legends connected with that. For example, in ancient Egypt, the goddess Nate was worshipped as the initial goddess of sky, wisdom and weaving, out of which the sun god came out and shined. According to myths, in the beginning of times she strained the sky on her weaving loom and weaved the world from the primordial waters, weaved all the living creatures, including men and women.
Usually, Nate, Nat, Nit was depicted with the help of the following hieroglyphs. The first hieroglyph means her name, the root NT. The second hieroglyph indicates her symbol placed on the head, and the third hieroglyph means goddess. It is interesting that judging by the root, the name Nate is connected with the root of the word, which means to weave, NTT. It is also the root of the word existence. Egyptians believe that Nate is connected with the goddess of primordial void, primordial waters, none. The name Nate is also connected by the root with the word water, NT, thus indicating the connection of Nate with the goddess of the primordial waters. In one of the myths, Nate is said to be the one who illuminated the first face, or illuminated the first face surface. Plutarch and Plato quoted the following text about the goddess Nate. I am all things that are, that will be, and that have been, and no mortal has ever unveiled my cover. According to the historical sources, in ancient Egypt there was a prayer to Nate. O, the great mother, whose birth is unperceivable. O, the goddess, young and great, whose cover cannot be unveiled. Oh, open your cover, the precious, because I have no way to you. Come and take my soul and protect it with your hands.
We can see similar picture on the other continents, 1,000 kilometers away from these places. For example, in North America, the indigenous people of Alaska, Indians of the Northern Athabascan ethno-linguistic group, have a myth about the goddess Atsentma.
It tells that Atsentma opened her eyes in an empty world. Then she weaved a cloth from the flowers of Cimmerian, fireweed, in Slavic nations a plant from the willow herb family, Ivanchai, and stretched it, fixing it at the corners on holy mountains. Then she started to sing. It caused the beginning of the universe. It is interesting that fireweed is rather widespread, in Alaska as well. Its flowers are arranged according to the four-hole scheme. Its lower ovary is four-sided. With time, it transforms into a long four-sided box, which bursts into 4 leaves and releases a lot of grains, which, thanks to long fuzz, have the ability to fly long distances. When we know such details, it is clear why this plant was used while explaining cosmological conceptions. Other nations of the world associated the universe with a plain four-sided brick and voice. The first word, the voiced sound, was associated with the primordial sound.
It is interesting that some of them still have ancient elements and attributes of the goddess who created the world. For example, clothing with grid pattern, spinning wheel, and some signs including circle, equal-sided cross, the signs Allatra and Allard. Note, for more information please refer to the book Allatra. All that has already happened, or is yet to happen, occurs here. The Ezoosmic grid exists, and this is a fact. Knowing the fundamental principles of the structure of the material universe, a person starts to look at the world, the processes and events that are happening in a different way. He understands the meaning of his presence in this world, and values every moment of his life.
Primordial Allatra Physics.